I notice a lot more like ethical AI teams standing up in different places that I work, different people that I talk to. So I think we're consciously like trying to leave things in a better place than we found them. But as things tend to scale really quickly, there's a lot of room for error. And we just need to make sure that we're building the right checks and balances to ensure that like we're not creating something that destroys the world.
How would you think about that vision of utopia, dystopia, versus how it's actually being implemented today? And, as someone who's been seeing this for, I think the past decade, like, what are you seeing as the gaps between actual implementation versus the vision of what you have just described?
The vision of what we saw or what we want from AI is very far from what we see today. Everyone thought AI would feel magical, and there are times where it automates things, and that does feel like it's somewhat of a magic. It's providing tasks quicker, allowing access to more information faster. When you try to just build something and have an image generated with text on top, like it's still really bad. You can see the potential of what it can be, but it's not realizing that potential. And there are developments every day and advancements, so it's starting to get better. You can see it improving, but it's still not where one would expect.
What's the true value coming out of AI? Because we're kind of in a play experimental phase of those areas between actual revenue driving versus more productivity focus. Like, where do you kind of see the bulk of the focus right now?
I can see where in a lot of places it's an efficiency play, right? It's, can I do more with less people? Can I do more faster? Can I eliminate some of the tedious work that happens in the background? For us, it really is, can we provide value to our customers to allow them to leverage AI to do things that they wouldn't normally do?
Hi, Andy Vitale. I'm so excited to welcome you to the DXC stage, where today we'll be expanding on AI perspectives from strategic design executive. Just a little bit about Andy, formerly EVP of design at Rocket Companies. He's also an adjunct professor of user experience design at the graduate program at Kent State University and one of our founding members. Andy, welcome to the DXC stage. How are you doing today?
Doing awesome, Gordon. Really excited to chat AI with you today.
Awesome. Where are you calling from?
I'm in our Boston office. I'm actually sitting in our CEO's office today.
Well, it's a great place to be. Well, tell us a little bit about your background, key roles you've held as a leader, and your experience with AI so far.
Sure. So I've led design in a lot of different spaces, in the healthcare space at 3M, power sports at Polaris, in finance at SunTrust and Truist, in lending at Rocket, and on the tech side at Constant Contact. I teach, like you said, online in a master's program for user experience design. So I get to really see how the next generation of designers are thinking about some of the things that we tackle every day or starting to tackle, like AI. I've been working in AI for a really long time. At 3M, we worked on natural language processing to auto-suggest medical codes to medical coders, but also to quantify quality of care for both doctors and nurses to make sure that patients were getting the right care and we were avoiding any readmissions. At Constant Contact, we leverage AI to really think about how we can help our customers, which are small businesses and nonprofits, to build marketing campaigns and marketing solutions so that they can actually grow their business and focus more on what they do, which is the baker baking bread, or whatever their small business is. They're experts in not in marketing. So we want to give them the tools that they need to grow that business for them.
Hopefully they get to do less tech and more croissants.
Exactly.
What is your current daily usage of AI tools, and what sort of tools are you using?
For me, I use AI a lot to really make sure that my writing is clear and concise. So I use ChatGPT all the time to how do I take this big message that I want to send to the team, but make it a little paragraph. Just recently, with the election coming up, I was like, hey, if you need to take some time, your mental health is important, just take a breather, take advantage of our flexible work time. But by the time I wrote it, it was like, nobody's going to read that long message. So ChatGPT helps me shorten it. We design for AI, so we use AI tools from time to time, a little bit of Adobe's AI tools. We're doing a little bit around generative image building, but for the most part, I use it mostly for words and for building the solutions that we provide our customers.
So would you say from scale to 1 to 5, 5 being I use it almost for everything versus 1 I never use it, where do you stand on that?
I would say for the things that I need to use it for, it's a 5.
Mm.
Since I'm not in the weeds designing, I don't use it. So if that puts me at a three, then I'm at a three. But ultimately, I use AI to simplify things for me. And I'm also just constantly like staying on top of the trends and where things are going. It's really exciting to see what my team generates with AI, from like how do we get a fully coded prototype in a matter of minutes,
Mm.
to how do we start to really identify like a PRD? What are the requirements for the product that we're building? And once
Mm.
we understand our customer, or even for research, how do we summarize a lot of our research needs? I find myself getting, like a lot of executives, a lot of long emails. And sometimes it's easier to just say, hey, summarize this for me for while I'm on the go, right? And then I could
Mm.
dig in later once I understand the ask in the email.
Yeah, just this morning I was watching the Apple Intelligence rollout videos, and I was just laughing at some of the use cases to really help humans. Kind of curious, for you, how would you characterize the current zeitgeist around AI? Any analogies or parallels do you see between current state of society and historical events?
Yeah, so to me, I think there's a lot of talk around ethics and how AI needs to be responsible. And I think that we've seen over the years of what happens with emerging technology. So as we're building products, as we're designing for these products, we don't get a chance to really understand the full capability of both the good and the harm that could come out of it. We're just building in the moment. And we realize sometimes after it's too late that, hey, that wasn't equitable.
Mm.
That thing that we designed has some bias in it because we had some unconscious bias and we weren't aware, right? And we've seen the trend of that through emerging technology, with facial recognition, with some of the COVID tests. Like, it's just been a steady stream. And we are hopefully learning from that and trying to not make the same mistakes as we start to really scale the capabilities of AI. I notice a lot more like ethical AI teams standing up in different places that I work, different people that I talk to. So I think we're consciously like trying to leave things in a better place than we found them. But as things tend to scale really quickly, there's a lot of room for error. And we just need to make sure that we're building the right checks and balances to ensure that like we're not creating something that destroys the world. Or when you see AI in like science fiction and TV shows, there's that dystopian future. We want to make sure that we're not getting to that point. I think it was funny when Elon Musk rolled out the robot and they asked him like, would this be used for good or could it be used for bad? And he's like, I'm 80% sure that it'll be used for good. But I mean, you never know. So we need people that are working on this to provide those checks and balances.
On the note of checks and balances, how would you think about that vision of utopia, dystopia, versus how it's actually being implemented today? And as someone who's been seeing this for, I think the past decade, like what are you seeing as the gaps between actual implementation versus the vision of what you have, just described?
I think the vision of what we saw or what we want from AI is very far from what we see today. I think everyone thought AI would feel magical, and there are times where it automates things, and that does feel like it's somewhat of a magic. It's providing tasks quicker, allowing access to more information faster. But I think that like when you try to just build something and have an image generated with text on top, like it's still really bad. You can see the potential of what it can be, but it's not realizing that potential. And there are developments every day and advancements. So it's starting to get better. You can see it improving, but it's still not where one would expect. I think I kind of liken it to when that first iPhone came out, right? Like it was cool. It was a new phone. It did a lot of things that a phone before that didn't do, but it didn't do the things you really wanted it to do,
Mhm.
not until like the third iteration of the operating system. So you can kind of see that. I think we see that with a lot of like early physical devices, but if we really look at how we can accelerate iterations through software, I think that we'll see AI will continue to grow and grow. I just played with the little rabbit device, and it's so like I want it to be so much more than it is. It's not there yet. We see it with Apple Intelligence, like you mentioned. I'm running the beta of 18.2, and when I try to get access to some of the like Genmojis, I still haven't been approved for that. So I'm like, man, I just want to play with it, right? And then everyone that's on 18.1 is like, oh, Apple Intelligence, I'm underwhelmed so far, right? Like that's the chatter among like the group chats, and I could see the potential of what they can do. And I think when we think about AI, we really want it to solve problems for us, give us access to data, summarize things like create tasks, automate tasks. And right now, it's used primarily out in the wild for things related to words, right?
Mm.
It's help create words, help modify these words to a specific voice, to a specific tone, but it's not really doing the thing. It has, there were early talk, people were scared it's going to like replace humans, it's going to replace jobs. And maybe in some places on assembly lines and as robotics come into play with AI, there's a greater opportunity. But for the most part, like you see, it's going to need people to drive that for a really long time.
On a scale of words to some, like, what's the higher order that you see? Just kind of curious to build on that
Yeah,
question.
I mean, I think we go words, we go images, we go processes. I
Mm.
think after processes, we go like manufacturing goods to, I think it's like centralized brains of like autonomous things. Like, how can I t- start from like input an idea and the finished product comes out, whether it's a physical good, whether it's a process that I have to
Mm.
implement. Like, I think at some point there will be just like set it and forget it groups of teams of projects that have to be worked on, that like you can maybe set it out and do like, go build me a car, right? Like, use the 3D printer to print this thing that I need, like make this prototype. And maybe at some point the AI is creating the AI. But I mean, who knows? That's more dystopian future than anything.
It sounds like a little bit of the gap between vision and reality is like shortening, and a little bit of what to your describe. It almost sounds like that might be a kind of conceptual model we can examine over time.
Yeah, I think this is a time for play again, right? I think when the web came about, it was like it was fun, it was exciting, it was like uncharted territory. You can learn, you can make a few mistakes. I think the mistakes we made again with the scale of AI makes it a little bit feel dangerous, but there's still
Mm.
such a fun aspect of it. It's that unknown, it's that chicken and egg. Like, can AI do this? Well, it could do anything, but you don't know what that anything is until you really play and experiment. And there are new tools, and every day there's another website, another use case for AI, and it's fun. I
Mm.
think that staying on top of these trends for some people, it's so enjoyable.
You're sitting in your CEO's office.
Right.
I want to kind of put you in the shoes of CEO. Like, where is design's value being
Yeah.
created in the age of AI? Think about your cross-functional partners. How do you distinguish yourself? What's that kind of unique perspective you're bringing, and how does it link back to things like revenue, costs, productivity, etc.?
Yeah. So I think AI feels at times like it's a solution that's looking for a problem.
Hmm.
And I think that, leading a design function, a design organization, and a company, where we come into play is identifying those human needs and human outcomes that we can leverage AI to kind of develop. And I think for us, right, it's the same company KPIs that we track. Do people use our products? How many people did we get to trial our product today? How many people have converted? And AI is one of those tools that they can use to accelerate their outcomes, but we still track it towards the main business OKRs and KPIs. And I think when we want to build things, it's really nice to have what we would consider like a blue sky. Oh, we can do anything with this AI output, or but the truth is, that's not how it works. We have to know exactly what we're trying to do, what need we're trying to meet, what problem we're trying to solve, and how it affects people and how they're going to use it. And that's when we can identify, well, AI can help us get here faster or help them get to a solution faster. So right now, AI is not really the answer to our problems. It's just a tool that we have at our disposal to help them do things in a smarter, faster way, right?
Mm.
How they interact with our product, how they can generate different marketing campaigns, or what messaging they should send, or how we can check it to see if there's a way that they can do a better job. Those are the ways that we leverage AI so that it delivers on those human outcomes.
Have you seen, because I think there's a lot of hype around, what's the true value coming out of AI? Because we're kind of in a play experimental phase. Like, of those areas between actual revenue driving versus more productivity focus, like, where do you kind of see the bulk of the focus right now?
I can see where in a lot of places it's an efficiency play,
Hmm.
right? It's, can I do more with less people? Can I do more faster? Can I eliminate some of the tedious work that happens in the background? For us, it really is, can we provide value to our customers to allow them to leverage AI to do things that they wouldn't normally do, right? Again, we're talking about the baker who is good at making croissants. The baker is not great at going into Canva or Photoshop or our own editor and really like building something. They want to be, but if they can leverage AI and enter a prompt and say, hey, I want to advertise my croissants 50% off sale this Saturday, right?
Mm,
That's an easier way for AI to give them a starting point so that they're not stuck just doubting themselves and saying, I'm not a marketer, I can't do this. AI is allowing them to get that, like, oh, wow, that looks cool. Maybe I want to change this image. Maybe I want to change this text. And AI can change their voice and tone. So it's putting more power in their hands to do things that they've never done before or didn't think they were able to do. So to me, that just goes hand in hand with using our product. And we know that the AI works if we see the increase in adoption, if we see new customers come on board and stay with us for longer, and we start to track those things.
What about now the cross-functional side of the business? So your peers, your partners, are there new dynamics you're noticing between business design leaders and other functions? Anything that you're finding as, areas of interest and, worth paying attention to?
I think AI is kind of like it's a hammer that's looking for nails, or the analogy of like when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I think we're hearing across the board, like, where can we leverage AI? Can we use AI for this? Is there an AI solution that we have for that? And I think that we just have a lot of discussion around where it makes sense, if it makes sense, how we can leverage it, what the capabilities are. I think we're having more conversations around that, but it hasn't come to the point where it's really like changing the dynamics of the relationships yet.
Mm.
I
Hmm.
think it's a powerful tool that a lot of people are trying to get educated on quickly and understand where the right use case is for it. And I think, again, like design really being tied to how whatever we put in front of people, we get to measure those outcomes on multiple scales. Did it actually work? Is it something people feel comfortable with? If they don't feel comfortable with it, how do we, communicate it in a way differently that feels less scary to them? I think, based on some of our customer base in the early days, when we tested some AI functionality, we thought about like maybe we shouldn't call this AI. Maybe it's an assistant. Maybe it's a helper because the thought of AI was scary. But now, like so many companies have spent a lot of time like just educating people on what AI is, and you see AI everywhere, you hear about it in the news. I think it's becoming less and less scary to people. I just don't think they understand how it impacts what they're doing. And we have a lot of conversations around that, about how we make people feel comfortable that we're actually helping them, we're providing value to them in a way that makes it, like you talked about, more efficient for them so they can focus on their business. So we have conversations all day long about where and how we can leverage it.
Mm. Do you feel any tension, as a design leader? I think a lot of design leaders naturally want to, articulate a clear problem, build a quality solution. And I think on the contrary, there's this kind of knee-jerk reaction to really getting AI everywhere and every place. So do you feel any sort of that tension? Is it kind of being received well to kind of push back a little bit, to go back to the basics and not kind of get lost in the hype?
Going back to the basics gets received well at times, right? I think there's always the fear of like, if we're going back to the basics, are we slowing things down a little bit along the way? And sometimes that's true, sometimes that not, right? Sometimes you really need to build the foundation of understanding the definition of the problem to be able to move faster later. In a lot of conversations I have, it's like, well, let's just go faster, bigger, better, faster, more, right? Like that's what you hear, especially from like sales partners who are really focused on like driving revenue. So I think that what we're really trying to do is communicate the intent, and our engineering partners are really strong in understanding AI and its capabilities and saying like, here's the thing we can do. And when we think about what that looks like, it's great, right? Always having a strong tech partner, a strong product partner that comes to the table with ideas, with solutions, with, it makes brainstorming easier. And I think that just like we talked about checks and balances in AI, this is a checks and balance situation in how we develop solutions for customers. So I think we always represent the human side of things, right?
Mm.
We are focused on the business outcome and how we can drive that. but we also want to help people understand that at the end of the day, the value we provide to people is what provides value to the business, as opposed to just putting a bunch of things out there that nobody uses. Yeah, it's great that you may have 55 AI solutions, but if nobody's using them, you just wasted a team's time that could have been focusing on something that provided more value to the customer. So I think it's important to continuously check and do things like we've done, like we've done Kano analysis, we've done max diff studies to see what features or what value we can provide next to our customers. And then if there's a way that we can supercharge that with AI and get it out to market faster and deliver more value, then we will.
Hmm.
If it's something that people want that AI can't help us yet, it's not there yet, or it's not even something we would consider for, that doesn't mean we're going to put an AI solution in front of it. It goes back to that value that we provide, and it's the design leader's job to hold those conversations. And what we also do as design leaders, a lot of times we are in a position to look at things from a horizontal view. So we think about the end-to-end experience. So we know that, like, if there's a problem in a certain part of our flow and we're focused on a completely different part because we can build an AI solution, like, that's not going to move the metric for our numbers that we're looking at. We got to identify where the problems are, and we need to focus on those first. So we need to still be the voice of reason of prioritizing, not just, hey, let's build features for feature's sake.
It's so interesting, the timeless wisdom to focus on people and the success and growth will come, right? I think that's kind of a narrative we keep hearing again and again. But I think what's interesting is how human nature can get so caught up in these hype cycles and just the race of everything, and sometimes even forget about those basics. If there was maybe even a point of advice or wish that you had of how business partners could better work with the design leaders and functions, like what would that be?
I think, the best way to work with a design leader is to really, like we tell design teams all the time, meet your partners where they are, right? It
Mhm.
also, there's a reliance upon our partners to meet us where we are. Design sometimes can drive a vision, can really create something that people can rally behind, can tell a great story, but the company also has to, like, be willing to understand that, accept it, ask questions, be engaging. My best partners, they come to me with ideas, with solutions, right? Like, not full solutions, but hey, I was thinking about this thing, what if we did this? I was thinking about this customer problem we have, and, like, they'll sketch it out or something, and you look at it and you go, that might not be the solution, we probably have to co-create that, but I really appreciate you sharing, like, your perspective and being engaged and coming with something, because oftentimes we look to the design organization to create that thing that people can start to talk around and talk about, and it's like, show up with something and people will react to it, right? I like when the partners do that to us, like, give us what they're thinking. We're not mind readers, right? Like anyone else, it's all about that, like, give and take of the relationship. And
Hmm.
I feel like the best way to really um, come to a design team or design leader is not just treat us like we're the artists in the corner in the basement that, like, bring things to life or kind of like crank out deliverables, but really, like, understand how what the design team's knowledge of our customers and how people interact with products and what their behaviors are, and understanding, like, behavioral psychology of how things work and how we impact outcomes is really important. So, like, just treating us like an equal partner in the room in some organizations doesn't happen. And I think that that's step one, right? If you're looking around the table and the design leader's not there, like, ask yourself why, like, what perspective can they bring to the table that's not there, and then invite them, right? I think that's key. If they are there, I think, like I said, being engaged and coming early in the process, involving people early in thinking, because design leaders have the opportunity to impact more than just design or more than just the product. We think about people, we think about processes, and we see how the organization operates, and we may have perspectives, and we do have perspectives of how we could improve certain things.
If we think about what you just said, and as AI continues to get more advanced and evolve, what aspects of our culture, our knowledge work, our creative work do you think should remain more human, and why? And what's your general posture on augmentation versus automation?
I think that there needs to be, so I'll start with augmentation versus automation. I think that AI is good for doing some augmentation on very menial design tasks, right? Like
What are those?
helping us go from, I don't think the 0 to 1, while it's there and might be helpful, it's not really the strong starting point that we always need. I think the 0 to 1 is harder with a blank piece of paper when you're thinking about what to write or what to say. But I think from a design standpoint, if you can get some basic designs with a human down, you can leverage AI for that augmentation to, or maybe this is a level of automation of like, hey, what does this look like in different color combinations? Hey, what does this look like in a couple of, like, take the meat of this layout and like reorganize it a few different times and like help that design leader move or the designer move from the full creator and approver to maybe just an input and approver. I think that that's where we'll start to see AI for a lot of things. I remember days when I worked in like on the marketing side, or even when we think about error states and button styles, right? Like, I don't want to create 15 different error states. If I can create the main one and AI can kind of automate the rest, I think that that's a great use case. But I don't think it's going to solve that problem like from 0 to 1. I think there's still a lot of opportunity and thinking that has to go in it, even if it's just prompt based, right? Even if I have to give a prompt to I think that designers, from what I've seen, are not the greatest yet at entering prompts. I think that every time we put a prompt in, it's like, oh, we didn't get the result we want. Let me go a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper. As the AI gets smarter, why doesn't it ask us for more? Like, hey, I see, like, I can't answer based on what you've given me. Let me ask you a few more questions. It's not there yet.
Yeah, we're talking about kind of knowledge work, creative work.
Yeah.
What should remain more human driven and why?
I think the human side of knowledge work and creative work is still going to have to focus on making sure that we achieve outcomes that are going to move the needle for the business based on people using our products and services, or even if it's physical goods. I think we have to think about where we can leverage those automations that we talked about.
I think you mentioned a lot about, within the design workflow, there's a lot of kind of repetitive, kind of reconstruction tasks that we should eliminate as much as possible so we can really focus on what it sounds like conceptualization, discovery, definition, really, and allow some of the other kind of repetitive, work to kind of be automated.
Yeah, but what I want to make sure we don't lose sense of is that like exploration and play space.
Mhm.
Because I think when we're really getting into solving the problem, there's a lot of iterations that we go through before we even like show anyone else. There's a few different versions of layouts, of messages, of like what we're really trying to solve. And I don't want to lose that. I think if AI can enhance that and speed some of that up, that may save us some time, but I wouldn't want that part to be replaced ever.
Hmm. In your view, how might you see AI shifting the nature of design leadership? Do you see new skill sets, mindsets we haven't yet anticipated or developed?
So, from a designer standpoint, I'll start there. I'm seeing a lot of tools that allow designers to go a couple of words of what they want to build and then a fully coded website or a fully functional prototype of a new product idea. And that's super exciting. When you think about leadership, though, there's some tasks that like, hey, I'm doing an annual review and here are the key points that I want to hit for this person. Can you help me summarize this in a way that really like brings these points I want to make to life? I think that that's one area where AI, like I said earlier, for messaging folks. But I think that as leaders, our job is to make sure that people have what they need to do their jobs and be successful and for the organization to thrive. And I think we need to identify opportunities where AI can help that. But we also have to make sure that we're still focusing on the people and the relationship from person to person. And I think that right now, AI is not going to replace relationships.
Hmm.
I think that that is going to always be our focus as leaders in an organization. I think when we think about how that what that means for design leaders, I think we need to show our teams, we need to be aware, we need to question our teams to make sure that they're staying on top of trends, that they're understanding what AI can do, that they are pushing us and making us feel like, oh wow, that's cool. I never realized that. That's a great, use case for AI that I wasn't aware of. Like, how do
Mm.
we take what the team is learning and help amplify that, and take what the team is doing and amplify that? And I think that, a lot of times ideas come from the top down, but they also come from bottom up. And it's really important that I love when our interns are here, right? Our interns always have that thinking of like, I understand new tech. I have this blue sky thinking, like I haven't been around the constraints of the organization. And I think that sense of wonder and play is something that we need to put back on our teams and ask them to like explore the possibilities. And it's our job to amplify that. It's just
Mm.
creating space, right? Creating a forum for them to learn.
Right. It sounds like almost a little bit like there's a intersection between if automation's helping us alleviate some of the repetition, the mundane, but at the same time, if a leader can create more space for experimentation, play, and all those attributes of discovery, it sounds like that might be a recipe of how this emerging new organization is going to look like.
Right. And I
Okay.
think the combination of those things is the breeding ground for innovation, right?
Hmm.
And I think that we're seeing more and more innovation happen from within the design side in partnership with product and partnership with technology. But a lot of that is driven based on innovation for humans. So
As a design executive, what is one task you'd wish to eliminate with AI's help?
I think if I could eliminate anything, it would be scheduling meetings, right? I
Oh,
think like finding a way to know, like, I want to meet with this person this often, like, go ahead or understanding when something has to move from my calendar and prioritizing that for me would be amazing.
wow, I wish I could just talk to my computer and it would do all that. That would truly be amazing.
Right.
We're kind of hinting a little bit at the future workplace. How do you kind of see it, not only think about just the design org, but just the business as a whole, about how the org, the team structures, the culture might shift with these tools now available to all?
Well, I still can't get to work using my briefcase that I press a button and it turns into a flying car like in the Jetsons.
I love the Jetson.
So I know, like that was the dream years ago. As a kid, I was like, I can't wait for those days. So I think we just need to be aware of like hybrid workspaces and understanding how to be in multiple, how to feel like we're in multiple places at once while keeping that connection, right? Excuse me. We have teams. I have teams everywhere, right? And for me, how do I make it feel like I'm physically present in those places? Yet how do I provide them the space that they need to go off and solve problems? And I think when we think about the future of work, it really is that like collaboration with people and with AI as it develops, right? How do we fit that into the mix? We see AI come into meetings and take notes, right? In the beginning, it was like, hey, who just kicked out the AI assistant? What are they doing here? Now it's like, man, I want all my meetings on Zoom because it sends the recap of those meetings to everyone. So I think we're getting more and more open to leveraging some of those where in the past it's like, whose turn is it to take notes for this meeting? It's like, nope, AI's got it this time. And we're seeing online, like maybe that's not as accurate as people think. But ultimately, I feel like it's providing a lot of value for us. So as we get used to working across time zones, working more asynchronously, we will start to integrate AI more and more to help us
Hmm.
do that as well.
On that note of kind of workforce design and policy and kind of evolution, like, do you see maybe one thing that you're really keeping a pulse on or observing, and how that's going to evolve, or, some gaps that you're noticing?
I think the thing for me that's top of mind right now is the new click to cancel laws that are going into effect of like if you sign up for a product, if you sign up for a subscription online, you have to be equally able to cancel it online just as easy. And I think as we think through that
Mm.
process, it's something like I'm using AI to like, hey, break down this law in like layman's terms so that I can understand it when I have a meeting with our legal team, right?
Mm.
So that's super top of mind to me right now as we start to understand how laws develop and then how AI can be used to interpret those laws and help us really solve problems there.
I mean, you're pointing to a different dimension, but I think what's interesting about just, building on your idea is I almost see AI being this equalizer, but I think to the next question actually, which is a little bit about what new competencies leaders need to develop. I think what you're kind of hinting at also is like if we all have equal access to some degree of AI tool, what separates others from others, right? And I think a little bit about what you're mentioning about how do you use it, how do you apply it, right? So let's expand a little bit about this thought of like what are those competencies and mindsets to really kind of future proof the evolution of our field.
Yeah, I mean, I just watched a presentation around like, is this the death of product management and what comes next from like Lenny's conference, and I shared
Mhm.
it with our CPO, and really what it says is there's a lot of people that are doing a lot of things in an organization, and AI can really help people be more well-rounded, right? So in that, in most organizations, there's a product team, there's a design team, there's an engineering team. What if that was a team of like one or two people that were able to do all of that work together? And I think about that often of like the team that I have, how can we put less people on things and scale the team onto more things and still maintain the quality that we're looking for? And I think that um, from a leadership perspective, I think that people will always have areas of expertise. I think that there were times where certain things felt more magical or more like able to not be contested in conversations. It's like, when you're in a conversation, the CFO, he knows the numbers. Like
Mm.
a design leader may not question those numbers if they don't have a business background. But now, like having access to what EBITDA means, like or things that like you don't learn in design school, I think that it's easy to have a little assistant with you that kind of breaks that down, and you can ask questions and you can understand it more. And I think that AI is the equalizer for that, like you say, so that it's not just like, hey, don't have an opinion on that other thing because it's outside of your area of expertise. I think
Right.
it's more empowering for us to be able to ask questions from a place that don't feel like we don't know what we're talking about, but it feels like we're trying to ask the question in the right way. So even helping the way we phrase questions to different audiences is really powerful use
Mm.
case.
Do you think the attributes of curiosity and the inquisitiveness of designers gets amplified in this world?
It has to, for sure. I think, having the right stage to ask the right question is more powerful than coming with a solution. I think when we think about how we move things forward in an organization, it's about that shared alignment. And whether we do agree all the time or disagree, we align and we move forward. And I think that this allows us an opportunity to ask those questions at scale to get that alignment and really drive that forward, drive ideas forward.
Let's think about the design professionals listening. Some people might be afraid certain rules are at risk, or how might they evolve. Like what is your kind of guidance to that kind of future evolution of future talent, maybe even existing talent, of how they're thinking about their role evolution and resilience?
I think the more someone can be really well rounded now, like, I don't want to say generalist because I know we all have areas of expertise that are still very valuable. But I think as we think about the designers coming up, merging into school or not yet in school, I think we're seeing that they're able to do even more. Like they used to ask, hey, should designers code, right? Now designers are leveraging AI to code. So they still aren't coding,
Mm,
but they're getting code out the door in a way that makes sense. Now, of course, you should probably have someone on the engineering team check the code, make sure it's not bloated, make sure there's, it's all right. But it's again, it gets us faster to a more like starting point solution, something that we can talk about.
mm,
So I'm thinking that like it's always good to gain more knowledge, and if this is a way to gain knowledge and skills faster, and it is, like adopt that. I
mm.
think back to when I graduated from school. I graduated in a small school, 30 people. I'm the only one that's still in the industry, right? And I think about now, like as design schools are getting bigger and as people are trying to work their way into the workforce, like what can you offer that's different that sets you aside from the people that you work with, and being able to do more is definitely something that organizations look for.
That's such a great way to frame because I think those debates of should designers learn business, should designers learn code, it's like, well, the table stakes have completely changed because the capabilities have completely changed, and now knowledge is available everywhere. And I think a little bit about your even the role of the design leader evolution because at this council we've talked a lot about learning executive and board level language right now, but you also now have these tools to help you ask such questions, right? And
Right.
so I'm thinking a lot about like how are we collectively evolving now that knowledge is so infinitely available, but at the same time is still the same. Like we still have only 24 hours a day.
Exactly. Time is still the same. And for us, like we are starting to see design leaders take on more than just design, right? Sometimes it starts with design adjacency, things like research, maybe a little bit of marketing, maybe a little bit of brand. And then it starts to shift to like some product or all of digital or an experience organization that encompasses like data, marketing. Like it's all about how we can start to think about and help our organizations think about the end-to-end customer journey. And when you think about things through a journey first perspective and what a customer does and the different touch points and what they interface with, it's easier to align teams around a journey than it is to align teams around different disciplines and different like
Hmm.
disjointed parts of the experience. So design, by having that view, by being able to tell that story, is a perfect natural leader for that. And as we've built the business acumen and understand how to ask the right technical questions and ask the right questions around how we measure outcomes, like we learn how to do that. And it's not well, it's still slightly uncommon, but it's you're seeing more and more design leaders step into that space because they just happen to have developed as executives who have a background in design,
Mhm.
and we're good at solving problems.
Yeah. Do you see, and this is a little bit off the cuff, but do you see leadership teams consolidating more roles or expanding?
I think depending on the organization, we're seeing a little bit of both, right? I think we're expanding as things are coming into focus around like data and security and information. And I think with AI, there's got to be a lens on that and around the
Mm.
ethics of that. So, I see it expanding in certain places, but I also see it constricting in places of like, hey, there's design, there's product, there's maybe marketing. Like, do we need to have these as all separate functions? Or can these be tied together? Even if there are different disciplines within those functions that we still respect, it makes sense to have a leader that can speak the language of
That's
the
right.
subgroup that goes under them.
What sort of disciplines in design do you see getting the most disruption versus the least? Any thoughts about, that dimension?
I think design is subjective by nature, right? A lot of people in the organization, product too, they have perspectives and opinions on what things can be or should be. Like, why not focus on this? Why focus on that part? Or why is your content like this and not that? So I think that the production level jobs of someone that's going in and
Mm.
designing multiple states and multiple layouts of different social images, right? I think that that's an area that AI will probably supercharge. I think that um, research readouts can become emails that are well written at certain times, depending on the audience that's needed. I think that there are opportunities for. Um, I think you're going to see a shift in design to being more strategic in organizations. I know there are design strategists, but I think as we think of design as a whole and where we know that it should play strategically, I think this kind of opens the door a little bit more for us to show our strategic value as opposed to being we often talk about outcomes over outputs, right? This is the chance we have to really focus on outcomes and leverage some help to build some of the outputs.
Hmm.
And to me, that's the biggest shift that we'll see in the short term in the design industry.
Thinking a little bit about the board level, at the risk level, what sort of value do you see design executives adding as companies are forging AI related policies, governance, guidelines, ethics? Any thoughts on that one?
I think our community as a whole is really focused on ethics and the right outcomes. So I think that we always have a perspective there. I think that we also think about accessibility a lot. And I think providing that accessibility lens to an organization is really key. I think that there are policies that come into play that we are really good at kicking the tires, but oftentimes design teams and leaders can be seen as pessimistic, right? Like, oh, you're just looking for ways that that won't work instead of trying to figure out the ways that it will work. So I think going in with an open mind and really showing the thought process of why we agree with a decision like this will work, or why this policy doesn't make sense and how it could impact people. And when we think about strategic foresight as well, I love strategic foresight, and I also really love crisis management. I think I like to go to a place of painting the worst case scenario so that we know how to avoid that and we build plans in place to avoid that. So facilitating conversations around what that looks like with the executive teams really helps us make better decisions and guide ourselves towards the right path.
What might the future customer user experience look or feel like? What's different 3 years from now versus 10 years from now? Give us a little bit of forward looking thoughts.
Yeah. So I think at some point, 3 years from now, it starts to predict our behaviors, right? I think we start to wake up and we've got an agenda at play. We've got, wake up and like automated, hey, you're going to go do this, whatever it is, like our calendar, our schedule, our thoughts. If I'm using a product, it anticipates what I want to do based on behaviors that I've made in the past. I think as we go further, it's all one continuous interface that stays with us.
Hmm.
Whether I'm on my phone or on my computer or in front of my TV or using a product, I think that we have something that helps us and guides us through the day with prompts. I think it's like I said, it starts really simple with like it evaluates us on past behavior and offers suggestions, and then at some point it full on like knows what we should do and why and helps us organize that way or perform tasks that way. And I think that to me is where I would love to be in 10 years, right? I would love to pick up my phone and it know like, hey, you haven't called Gordon in 2 weeks. Like, why don't you call Gordon right now, right? Or like it monitors your social and it's like this thing is top of mind for Gordon. Like, give him a call and talk about this. Right
Hmm.
now, it'll tell me every time I get in my car, it maps out to the airport. It thinks I'm driving to the airport, and
Hmm.
99% of the time I am. But how great would it be if like while I'm on the way to the airport, it knows what playlist I want to listen to on my way to the airport. It knows from conversations I've had what my mood is. Like, hey, Andy's a little angry today. Like, why don't we put on some Taylor Swift for him instead of like Metallica? And I think those things would be helpful. Like
Hmm.
along the way, like you haven't the last time you ate was at like noon. Like you're walking home, as you walk to the hotel, like there's a Chipotle there, or if you're feeling a little bit more healthy today, which you probably should be based on what you ate earlier, like there's a just salad right on the left hand side. So I think that's where I really want to see AI come in and help me in my daily life.
Hmm. Reflecting even on that, I think a lot about, as you're talking about music and transportation, there's a lot of actually habits and behaviors we repeat as humans. And I think there's a lot of simple menial tasks that could be really streamlined and automated that feels really nice. So, yeah, I
And
think
then
there's.
can it
Mhm.
know enough about us to know when we should break those habits and when we should go a little bit outside of our comfort zone? Can it help us grow as people
Hmm.
that way?
Let's think a little bit on what you're saying here. So predictive, I think in the last decade before AI, we even thought about a lot about personalization,
Right.
data, marketing experiences that are super personalized. Now we're talking about like the total product, experience, not just marketing. So doesn't that hint a little bit about where true competitive advantage starts to arise for companies in a different way, ecosystems,
Yeah.
data,
When
right?
you can anticipate needs and then provide that ecosystem of information, that's a thing that we started to do at Rocket. We started to look at how we can capture people in their life cycle for finances, right? Can we get them in early with a personal finance tool, or do they have a loan with us? Can we start to understand some of the other things that they will need in their life when they're ready for that second home? How do we help them get ready for that first home mortgage, right? So how do we start to identify what that life cycle is and start to predict how to move them into different parts of where they need to be or where they should be? And that to me is such an exciting opportunity. I know banks are working on that all the time. Like, where's the right person? When's the right time to get someone into the ecosystem? Where do you provide value, and how do you provide
Mm.
value to them through the life cycle of their time with you?
Hmm. Let's put a pin on this. I think predictive experiences and thinking about those time thresholds, and even what sort of business strategies, data strategies, and then experience enablements, like what sort of comes out of those, kind of quality areas of, what we can actually do with AI. Just to kind of round up this interview a little bit, is there any kind of key leaders, thinkers that you admire when it comes to making sense of this age? What can we learn from their views?
I mean, I'm I read all the white papers and all the reports from the different consultancies to kind of generate my own point of view. I think, I still look at some of the original thinkers of what we do, like Clayton Christensen for business. And I'm trying to think, for some reason his name is blanking for me right now. I see his face, I see his book, but like the Rotman School of Design has really interesting articles about how to embed like design inside different businesses. And it's really important for us to understand like what has happened as emerging technologies have come into play.
Oh, Roger Martin.
Roger Martin, exactly. Yeah, Roger Martin is someone that I still think, like, a lot of his, he still writes, but I think some of his older writing just really stands true, and it provides just a way to think of like, are we still thinking about things this way? Are we still trying to, like, Porter's five forces, right? I mean, those are so important to think about, as and where AI could come into play to really leverage that in some of these areas. So I think from a I read a lot of the blogs, right? That's the fun part for me, and then I share them with the team and we have discussions around them. But it would be really hard to pick one thought leader. Who are other people talking about in this space?
There's a lot of, Fei Fei Li is probably one of my favorites right
Okay.
now from a woman, leader perspective. I really enjoyed just like really focusing on a human-centered innovation, ethical AI. Honestly, I've also I recently came from Europe, and I've actually drawn a ton of inspiration from nothing AI related, but actually art history
Right.
and architecture and how major breakthroughs in human civilization happen. And I think we're actually another inflection point of breakthrough in how do we derive meaning from that. So that's something I'm truly studying, is actually history rather than just thinkers.
To make sure it doesn't repeat itself.
Or what can we learn to enable more of, right?
Right.
So just to end it here, though, any movie, book, or story that gives you inspiration for the better future or a future to prevent?
I'm really bad at movies and reading like fiction books. So to me, the first thing that comes to mind is Black Mirror. I think that Black Mirror is a great example of what could go wrong in a pretty scary yet lighthearted way. So it's like, oh, I could see that happening, but actually, like, I could see how that's not going to happen also. So I think ways to like provoke thought and poke fun at what could be if things go completely wrong is a good place to kind of like explore, so that you can make sure that that doesn't happen. So that's one I always enjoy, and there's always more episodes than I thought there were every time I check.
Your whole note about predictive experiences seem very linked to Black Mirror. So there's quite a close gap there. So
Yeah, sometimes they're onto things. You just got to make sure that they're used for the right, not the wrong.
that sounds good. Any last thoughts, Andy? This is a fantastic conversation.
No, I've really enjoyed it. I think, like, for anyone out there, like, keep learning, keep playing, keep exploring. Like, we need to be ahead of where things are going so that we can shape the future that we want.
Awesome. Well, Andy Vitale, such a pleasure to have you today on a beautiful Monday. Thank you so much for being here on the DXC stage.
Thanks, Gordon. Appreciate it.